welcome to another weekly update. I hope you had a really good week and are doing well. All right, let's get into it. A couple of things to talk about this week. I did put out the next part of my kind of series that I'm doing around building declarative agents, especially the ones that use API plugins, because I think they're really interesting. And I think they're going to be the most disruptive. The part that I put out this week was really kind of setting the scene for the kind of demo, if you like, and just bringing some of it to life, ready for the next part, which will be telling you exactly how to do it. This is the sort of the prelude, if you like, to the how-to. This is the let's show you what you could build. If you've been following me on LinkedIn, then you'll be aware of this thing I've been doing called ClothesPilot. See what I did there? Which is this kind of idea that can you use the power of Copilot and the power of AI and the fact that it can call APIs on your behalf. Can you do that to create something that can suggest what clothes you should wear in the morning? And that's exactly what I've done. Very, very briefly, the way it works. There are APIs to get my calendar information. There are APIs to get the weather where I am, and there are APIs to get a list of what's in my wardrobe. And based on all of that and some AI instruction and prompting, it is able to suggest some clothes for me to wear. So I go through kind of exactly how it works in the blog post, but not how to build it, because that's the next one. So this just goes through. And just before I go through this, the reason for this is partly because I thought it'd be useful and interesting. Because, I kind of do struggle with sometimes that. I tend to wear the stuff I see in front of me, and like it tends to be the same set of clothes on rotation as they get washed. But it's for me, it's quite important to find when looking for demo material and writing demos, it's quite important to find something that is interesting and captures the attention, but also is transferable. So somebody sitting in a business can read it and say, okay, I see what he did there, and that's interesting. I would never want a ClothesPilot for myself, but I understand enough to see how I can take this and apply it to my problem in my business. And so that's always what I'm trying to do. And that's where this came from. Something like this that has to call multiple APIs. And not just, the really interesting thing about these as well is it's not just about calling APIs. You can call APIs it's not just about getting data. You can set data. You can put and patch and do all the API things. You can do that as well. So now you're updating data as well and causing things to happen and making actions. And that's really interesting. Anyway, so talk a bit about the setup. There's some screenshots in here about what it's like to use. It also does visual representation of stuff. And so I've been doing this thing where every day I've asked it what to wear. I've asked it for an image, and then I've chosen those clothes. I've put those clothes on. And then there's a photo of me alongside the kind of generated image. There's lots of other examples like this on LinkedIn. I've put a couple at the end as well. I also asked ClothesPilot to describe itself, which I thought was kind of interesting because obviously it knows all the things it can do and it has its capabilities. So that was kind of an interesting side experiment. But yeah, there's a couple more images here, as you can see, of its suggestions and then how it looks. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you're just going to have to go and either check out the blog post for the pictures or go to LinkedIn and see. I've got a few more to do. This one was not a ClothesPilot choice, but I'm going to do a couple more this week, I think. But yeah, it's been really interesting, honestly, as an experiment. And it's given me lots of ideas and it's given me lots of feedback on what works and what doesn't work. All right. Next up, this is kind of an interesting one. On the face of it, I was like, oh, that's not really interesting. But the more I thought about it, I think it is worth talking about because it shows an interesting level of dedication. So what am I talking about? The Azure Communication Services team have updated their technical documentation, specifically the table of contents. Now, by itself, you might think that's not very interesting. But actually what they've done is they've sort of realized that this standard set of sections that you see an awful lot in Microsoft Learn, the overview, the quick start, the tutorials, then samples, concepts, resources, and references, wasn't really working for them. And doesn't really work when you've got something like Azure Communication. It works fine if you've got like here's an API call, all those things completely make sense. Where you've got something like Azure Communication Services that's like an entire platform, it doesn't really, like, it's not granular enough. And so they've been trying to address this problem. And the reason I think this is worth talking about is the way in which they've done it, and actually the way that they've documented how they've done it, which I thought was really interesting. Very around, talking to people, testing out different things, research, going back to customers, and I thought this was a real level of kind of detail and research that they did. They've come up with a new structure, which I like the look of, honestly. I think it will work well for Azure Communication Services. They want your feedback as well. So do get in contact with them if you see something you like or you don't like. So I think it's really interesting. They've got a survey link at the end. There's also a direct email you can do as well. I think this is good, partly because it'll improve the documentation, and that's an important part of the whole puzzle. But also, I think it's good just that they're doing it because it shows that they care, and I think that's really good. It shows that there's no hubris. It shows, that they want people to use the documentation and they want people to use Azure Communication Services. And I think that's a really important thing. And out of that comes better product and better documentation. So I applaud this. I think it's a really good idea. I'm glad they wrote it up rather than just make the change, because actually if we just had the change, I probably wouldn't have noticed it, honestly. And B, even if I had noticed it, I probably wouldn't have thought about it too much. I just might have thought, well, actually, it's slightly easier to find stuff, whatever, stuff's moved, who's moved my cheese. But actually, this little insight into the work they've done to get to this point, I think is worth writing up and is worth recognising. So full marks to the Azure Communication Services technical documentation team, if that's such a thing. All right, finally, I just want to tell you about a Pluralsight course that fellow MVP, Jamie Maguire, has done. Jamie's courses are really good. You should go check them out. They're on Pluralsight. This is not a paid for plug or anything like that, honestly. It is just, I saw the title of it and I haven't done the course. That's my other disclaimer. So A, it is not paid. B, I haven't done it. But hear me out. So I've done Jamie's courses before and they're very good. This one I thought was really interesting. It is aligning generative AI with business cases. So this is, I think, a really important thing this year for lots of people. I think lots of consultants will be doing this. Lots of analysts will be doing this. Lots of CIOs, CTOs will be trying to understand, okay, we have generative AI. Now what? How do we apply this to our business? How do we make it useful? How do we see the value, realize the value, and all this stuff? And I think this is interesting. It's interesting to see a Pluralsight course focused just on this. And so for that reason, I wanted to call it out because I think it will be a thing that lots of people will find valuable. It goes through the whole process of exploring, understanding how you could leverage Gen AI, the tools and concepts that you use to develop, and then actually kind of inside that course, it's wrapped up with a whole kind of let's build something to kind of prove the point. So I think this is worth looking at, honestly. It's all built around the Microsoft stack and OpenAI. So Jamie knows his stuff and his courses are good. So if that sounds interesting, go check it out, especially, if you can do Pluralsight courses where you are, that's great. Check it out because I think it'll be a good one. All right, I think that's everything from me. I hope you have a really good week this week. This is the week I try and get some video out around this ClothesPilot stuff and finally finish all the blog posts. So we'll see how that goes. But whatever it is you're doing, have a good one. And I will speak to you again next time.